Well, it happened again, guys. Another injury for this injury-plagued 2018 season. My Boston Celtics affected once again, this time the nail in the coffin, Kyrie Irving. He's out for the postseason, and as a result, they could very well lose in round one. I'm not going to focus too much on if they're going to lose in the first round or whatever. I guess I could just mention it real quick. I think between the bottom three teams, they would lose to Miami, they would lose to the Wizards as long as John Wall is like relatively himself, and they would beat the Bucks because the Bucks, while they have Giannis, they just don't play like a team. They just play like a collection of players, and they need an actual head coach. And Brad Stevens should be able to beat them and then stretch out the other two series because he's a really good coach and they play good defense and they've grinded out some wins lately and all that stuff. Okay, now we're going to talk about what is probably the more exciting and more thought-provoking part of this, which is the future, right? Gordon Hayward, I think, was the first thing that I thought of in like his timeline compared to Kyrie's. Based on Gordon Hayward's career, where he hasn't really had any big injury things, I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be like Paul George, where he has the really bad injury, misses a lot of time, comes back, and he's pretty much the same dude, and it's like it never happened, basically. I think Hayward's going to be okay. I think we could see Gordon Hayward leading the Celtics offense next season. Even if Kyrie Irving is there, Kyrie may not totally be himself, and I think we have some decent evidence for that I will back up in a moment here. And while I think Gordon Hayward is not good enough to really handle the ball as much as Kyrie does, Brad Stevens runs enough motion offense to where you're not going to ask Gordon Hayward to just constantly beat guys in one-on-ones. It's going to be like handoff plays, and he's going to be moving off the ball and all that kind of stuff. So he should be fine, and I think the Celtics can get by with Kyrie not being 100% next season. And, you know, they'll still be really good on defense and all that stuff. And then hopefully Kyrie can be himself by like mid-season. Now, the reason why I am assuming that Kyrie is not going to be himself the moment next season begins is because, number one, this is a trend now for him with this knee stuff. This is his second knee surgery of his career. He also missed the majority of his season at Duke because of a foot injury, and I'm pretty sure the foot hasn't affected him too much since he got into the NBA, but I think we've seen with Derrick Rose that once you start accumulating lower body injuries, they kind of bounce off of each other, and they kind of... It's a bad trend, right? Like we've seen with D. Rose, like, okay, you know, he had the ACL stuff, but then he'll also have some ankle stuff or some hamstring stuff, and maybe that's because he changes his running stance or he changes the way he jumps or whatever. You know, it's a bad sign when you start just having a lot of lower body problems, and that's kind of a thing now with Kyrie Irving. The other thing is he's supposed to miss about 4 to 5 months with rehab and all that, which puts us right in like September, which is right before the NBA season begins. Well, not right before. There's still a decent amount of time there, but you know what I mean. But the other thing is, in 2016, or technically it was the beginning of, well, it was the end of 2015, right before the 2016 season started, where he had knee surgery. Kyrie was not himself for that entire regular season. You know, his three-point shot was way down, his free throws were down, his scoring was down, everything was down. He was just a worse player, right? Didn't have the burst, couldn't beat guys off the dribble as much, didn't have the lift on his jump shot, and he played like 53 games. I think we could see a similar thing for that this upcoming season, because Brad Stevens is a guy who really believes in like resting players, you know. But the other thing he'll do is he will take guys out of the lineup if they start to show early signs of either fatigue or some soreness somewhere or an injury. I mean, Stevens understands that it's a long season and what really matters is the playoffs. So if that means you're not going to play Wednesday against the Knicks, then you're not going to play. So we're probably going to see a lot of that this upcoming season for Kyrie, potentially even a minutes restriction. He played about 32 minutes a game this season for them. And now I guess what you can get into is, well, actually before that, I want to say, Of course, he was fantastic in the postseason in 2016. So, like I said, I think by probably about game 30 or 40, we're going to see Kyrie Irving all the way back to what he was. And the reason I say that is just because if you line up the timeline with this one compared to his one in 2016, that one came right before the season began. So a lot of that catching up was done while he was actually on the floor, whereas at least in this situation, he's got like a solid 5-month buffer to get ready for the regular season. Even so, I do think it's going to affect him still. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the question now is, when are we going to see the real Boston Celtics? When are we going to see Gordon Hayward play 75 games, Irving play 75 games, Horford hopefully not be too old, and then all of that encompassed by Brad Stevens' motion offense and all that? I mean, honestly, given how Stevens is really conservative when it comes to players' health, we might not see that until, like, really, past mid-season of next year. Even then, if I say like halfway through next season, I don't really know, because, well, it really depends on Stevens. You know, the one thing that I will say with him is he has found an ability of getting people to kind of get acclimated with his system pretty easily and pretty quickly, and I think the reason for that is because he doesn't have a strict system. You know, he doesn't have like a Rick Carlisle thing where it's like, I'm going to play this way, and too bad, Rondo, you don't fit. Stevens will change things up for the sake of the team. So an example of this being like, you know, Jay Crowder never ran isolations because he can't, right? Marcus Morris has isolation moments in the Celtics offense. Another example just being Kyrie himself. Stevens is never going to just run super simple basketball all the time, but he still adjusted his style to not have Kyrie doing exactly what Isaiah Thomas did, which was sprinting off the ball like 70% of the time. Kyrie does it like maybe 40% as much as Isaiah did, and there's a few more ISOs and all that because that's what he's good at, you know? So Stevens is good at making the adjustments for the sake of his players. So if he's seeing that perhaps just Kyrie is not totally himself and he's got to adjust the offense in some way, maybe it's taking the ball out of his hands more often and having him run off ball a little bit more, which may or not be good depending on how his athleticism is affected by this. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. Then, you know, we could see a different style offense, but it might not necessarily be the best style of offense. You know, I think what would be the absolute best is what we've saw from Kyrie in the games he did play for the Celtics this year, where it was a good balance between on-ball and off-ball, and then you put Gordon Hayward into that as well through probably somewhat similar to like how Jason Tatum has had it, where Tatum, when he does have the ball in his hands, a lot of the time it's like in motion, so he's not just bringing the ball up floor and, hey, go make something happen out of nothing. I think Hayward would be in a similar situation, a little bit more, probably a lot more than Tatum, of course. And then Hayward would still have his occasional pick and rolls and isolation sprinkled in there as well. So, I don't know, man. I do think there's a chance that the offense we see from the Celtics once Kyrie is back in there might not really be what it was this season, and that might be to acclimate him towards recovery and all that stuff. And of course, probably not playing a crap ton of games next year. So, yeah, you know, there's a chance that he might do the same thing he did in 2016, where the regular season's kind of rough, and then the postseason he goes nuts. So, yeah. Tough break. I think ultimately they'll be fine, but it's definitely been a tough thing, because you saw the Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward era about to begin, and you said this is going to be really good, and Hayward misses this year. Kyrie could not miss all of next year, but a decent amount of it, and not be himself, and at that point, maybe things really don't go well, and he's really in and out of the lineup all year next year, and then they don't really have the opportunity to like be the real team until after next season, and then at that point Al Horford may be too old, and then whatever. I'm going down the dark path here. I'll try to remain positive as my team falls apart in front of me. Anyway, I'm done. In Brad Stevens we trust. Hopefully Kyrie Irving will be good. That's it.